oh, I'm not the only crazy one out there. There is a lot of people who actually practice what I do. And when these people come together and we're simply facilitators of gathering those people together, magic happens.
Bienvenidos a Volver al Futuro Podcast, donde platicamos con las mentes que nos impulsan a crear el nuevo paradigma de salud y bienestar, conducido por Víctor Sadia.
Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We have with us today Stephan Herzog.
Stephan Herzog ha pasado la mayor parte de su carrera profesional trabajando para grandes multinacionales en Australia, Europa y los Estados Unidos. Como actual director ejecutivo del American Board of Lifestyle Medicine, encabezó el desarrollo y la implementación de la primera certificación en Medicina de Estilo de Vida para médicos y profesionales de la salud. Y como director ejecutivo del International Board of Lifestyle Medicine, lidera la expansión y sindicación de las certificaciones de Medicina de Estilo de Vida en todo el mundo.
Stephan, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Okay, well, as you heard, I'm not a medical guy. I'm a commercial guy. So I came to lifestyle medicine more as a fluke rather than by design. I've always kind of tried to lead a healthy life. But funny enough, in the previous life, I ran Australia's largest chain of fitness centers. And we would have over 100,000 members and probably 2,500 employees, most of them personal trainers. And I'm still embarrassed about the rubbish we would tell our customers. You know, whatever came down the blog, whatever came down the internet shoot, we would today was paleo, tomorrow it's keto, the day after it would be Mediterranean diet. And we would always sell it as the truth, right? As in today's truth is do this, don't do that, eat more of this, don't do that. And it's embarrassing, you know, like how much rubbish we would tell people. And so when I came to the US, so an Australian company then hired me to look at an acquisition they did in the US, which was the American Lifestyle of Medicine Institute in the US. And so I started working for them, and then people obviously immediately indoctrinated me about, lifestyle medicine and the errors of my way. And so over the last probably 7 or 8 or 9 years, I've been kind of converted by osmosis, so to speak, rather than by anything else. And so, yeah, that's kind of my background. A healthy life, I try to lead by example. So, you know, try not to be overweight, try to have my 15,000 steps every day, try to eat plant-based, whole foods, minimally processed, and all of those good things. Sleep out my 8 hours at night and, you know, don't take any substances. Yeah, well, we just see how we go.
How did you get to the lifestyle medicine movement, such top ranks? How was the process?
Because of the lifestyle medicine being an emerging science, there is obviously the movement has always been looking for people who have a purpose, who are purpose-driven and passion-driven and believe this with all their heart and souls. And so while I was looking after the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine out of Loma Linda, which by the way is a blue zone, right, I met a gentleman called Dr. Wayne Dysinger. We hired as our medical director for the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine. And he happened to be the past president of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And then over time, we became personal friends. We started walking every week, you know, before work, we would go walk in the hills behind his house. And then one day he said, Stephan, at the American College, we're looking at building the American Board of Lifestyle Medicine because in the US, educating entities have to be separate from certifying entities. And we're trying to write a white paper so we can get some grant funding to get this started. And would you have any interest in helping us do that? And so I said, yeah, all right, I'll give it a shot. I put forward a white paper, strategic plan, basically, on how to do this. And the board, the newly formed Board of Lifestyle Medicine said, all right, we like the plan. Who's going to execute it? Can you do it? And I said, well, can you afford to pay me? Because I can't do this always pro bono, right? So we did a deal where for the first 6 months, I actually did everything pro bono. I tried to organize, obviously, the first certification exam, got the item writers together, organized everything, and then obviously started to sell certification exam registrations. And out of those registrations, they were then able to pay me mind you, a measly salary, but I don't do this for money. I do this because it's the right thing to do and because I like to think I know what I'm doing, or at least I have some skill in what I'm doing. And then one thing leads to another. And the next thing we know is we have a huge response to our initial exam in the US in 2017. We had 300 people sign up for the exam. And then immediately the Australians said, oh, can we do this too? And then the Brits came and said, can we do this too? And in the Philippines and in Korea. And then I said to my board, hey, why don't we do this and syndicate this globally? They said, well, we don't really have any time or energy, but if you want to do it, go ahead. And so for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been doing this, again, the IBLM thing. And again, the IBLM is totally pro bono. I don't get paid for it. But again, it's the right thing to do. And we are making tremendous inroads. So we've had 17 global exams already, and we have 1,500 diplomates around the globe. And this thing is just going gangbusters.
Why do you think that, we've known about lifestyle as an important factor for health for ages? Why do you think that the way that you are now conveying this as a new field and as a more standardized way of teaching it and then allowing them, the professionals, to have the tools to convey to their patients is really taking off?
Because I liken it to the idea of smoking. When smoking was very prevalent in the 50s and everybody smoked and the government promoted smoking and physicians promoted smoking and everybody thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then people started to realize, the first medical, research came out saying, hey, smoking actually might be carcinogenic. And then it was 10 publications, and then it was 100, and then it was 1,000. And people started to say, we cannot possibly be, because, look, I'm smoking and most physicians were smoking. So how can this possibly be not good for your health? We're in the very same boat today about food. Food, because of, we all like longevity in food. We all like to have our bread that we buy to be still good in the fridge for the 30 days after we come back from our holidays. We can still pop it into the toaster and it's still a decent slice of toast. What we don't realize is that everything that's good and that is nourishment within the toast is actually perishable. And so in order to increase the shelf life of food, we have to take out all the goodness, replace it with a lot of synthetic, artificial crap, excuse the language, and then we call it food or food-like substances that are produced in a factory. But man, we can have it in our cupboards for years sometimes, right? And so that has caused our health to go really, really down the chute. The second thing that happened is that as we become more affluent after the war, where family used to have meat once a week on a Sunday as a special treat. Now meat, if we don't have meat for breakfast, meat for lunch, meat for dinner, we think we haven't eaten. And even the language that we're using, we don't call it meat anymore, we call it protein, because protein is something to be aspired to. We all need protein. And so we all have bought into the myth that our body needs this incredible amount of protein, and protein obviously only be gotten from animals, which then have all the downside like saturated fats and whatever else. And so you have those two factors combined. And then the third one, the advent of, we don't drink water anymore, we drink rubbish. We drink the Cokes and the Fantas and whatever else, all the fizzy drinks. Starbucks has done a wonderful service in, like the Frappuccinos and all those heavily caloric drinks that most people put 2,000 calories in drinks into their bodies every day, long before they even start with the food, right? And so we have created this obesity crisis, which then creates all these non-communicable diseases, or what we call chronic disease. Now, the medical model is all built on the communicable disease model. The communicable disease model simply says, diagnose the ill, prescribe the pill, and then send the bill. And physicians do this 30, 40, 50 times a day. You go see your physicians, they say, oh yeah, you got diabetes too, here's your metformin, off you go, here's my bill. You spend 7 or 8 minutes with the physician, you have no idea why you have diabetes too, you have no idea that you could do something about it. You've been prescribed metformin with all the side effects that brings, right? And off you go. So we're in this crossroads, we have at the crossroads where physicians simply realize that the communicable disease model doesn't work for non-communicable disease. All we do is manage illness, will no longer restore health.
So what you're saying basically is that things are cutting up to us now. Science is cutting up. The bad health that we are having is cutting up, and we're just asking the right question at the right moment when we're seeing the results.
Absolutely. And take COVID. I mean, this is extremely relevant at the moment. When you look at all the statistics of all the countries, virtually, and again, I'm using Pareto here, so 80-20 rule, right? 80% of all deaths come from people who have comorbidities, who are obese, who have diabetes, who have COPD, who have cardiovascular disease. And we attribute the death to COVID, which is quite wrong. COVID was simply the thing that tipped them over the edge. What killed them was their chronic disease, right? It just killed them a little bit earlier. And again, the whole idea of increasing your immune system, when you are unhealthy, when you suffer from non-communicable or chronic diseases, your immune system is heavily taxed. Most chronic disease comes from a thing called chronic low-grade inflammation. And chronic low-grade inflammation is obviously caused by our saturated fats, by our heavily processed foods, and all of those other good things, by all the processed sugar we put into our body. And that taxes the immune system like nothing else does. And so if our immune system is low, and then we don't sleep well because of all the side effects of the pill, so again, that affects our immune system further. So we get to a point where our immune system is so weak that now every virus, every bug that flies through the air, we catch, and it causes us substantial grief.
Okay.
So again, people are starting to realize something is desperately wrong with the way we practice health.
How is lifestyle medicine as a movement and as a branch of medicine getting its room with functional medicine, alternative medicine, mind-body medicine? Where do you see functional medicine as a branch?
Okay, so I always make a very crummy example, so please forgive me. I say, if you were diagnosed from suffering from scurvy, I know we haven't had scurvy for hundreds of years, right? But most people still know what scurvy is. If you're diagnosed with scurvy, lifestyle medicine says, eat oranges, lots of fruit, right? That gives you all the vitamin C you need, scurvy is gone. That's the basis of all medicine as we see it. If you then still suffer from scurvy after you've eaten all the fruit you can eat, then integrative and functional medicine might say, hey, let's do a lipid panel and see why you're still having a vitamin C deficiency, and maybe prescribe you some vitamin C gummies, vitamin C pills. And then if it persists, you might need some pharmaceutical help here. And if it still persists, you might need the surgeon to cut the sucker out. But we kind of look at it almost as a pyramid, where at the top of the pyramid sits obviously surgery. And at the top of the pyramid, that's also where the interception or the intervention is the most foreign and the most expensive. At the bottom, it's the most natural and the least expensive intervention. And so when you go from the top of the pyramid to the bottom, the top is surgery, then comes pharmaceutical, then comes integrative and functional medicine. And the basis of all medicine in our books is the way we eat, the way we sleep, the way we move, and the way we think. And we can fix 80% of all disease if we just address the basics.
What have been the biggest challenges that lifestyle medicine has had in the US to get more traction with doctors that have been trained in the old school?
The medical establishment, the doctors.
Yeah.
Because you don't learn about lifestyle medicine in med school. You have between 4 and 6 hours of nutrition, which when you think about it is utterly ludicrous. So Mexico is a big country for producing cars, right? If you were a car engineer today and you had 2 or 3 or 4 hours of propellants of cars, you would never be able to pass your engineering degree, because the way cars are being propelled today is one of the most important questions to be asked. Is it diesel? Is it hybrid? Hydrogen? Is it electricity? But when it comes to the body, we're perfectly okay that the mechanic knows nothing about the propellant, what makes the body tick. And it's all about, again, what I said, the top of the pyramid, the surgery and the pharmaceutical intervention. That's all we learn at med school. And so a lot of the doctors are heavy partakers of bad food. When you look at, and I don't know what it is like in Mexico, but I can tell you that the medical establishment in the US is part of the sickest population in the US. So a lot of physicians are morbidly obese. They have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 comorbidities. A lot of the nurses and the orderlies are incredibly overweight and obese and have all the same issues. And so if you're a physician and you tell your patient to eat healthy, that's like the smoker who tells his son not to smoke. It just doesn't resonate. People don't believe it. And there is an additional thing. The same people who used to sell you cigarettes today, they sell you Coke and they sell you crackers. It's the same companies. And they have always operated with this little method called doubt. If I can introduce doubt, most people stop thinking and simply say, you don't know who to believe anyway, so I'm just going to do what I think is right. And that means I stop eating my carrots because somebody said carrots are carcinogenic, right? And I stop having alternative milks. I keep on drinking my cow's milk because somebody said, but there's estrogen issues with soy milk, and there is whatever issues with almond milk. And so doubt stops people from actually taking action.
And what are the tactics that lifestyle medicine, the college, the board are taking to change doctors' minds about this?
So there is obviously a bunch of people like you and me who've always tried to live healthy. And we used to do this in isolation. I think back to my mom, for crying out loud. I used to think I was cursed by a mother who didn't bring home Coke, but made me drink water, who grew strawberries and raspberries and whatever else in her own garden. And I had to eat that stuff rather than being able to go to McDonald's, right? I thought, why, God, have you given me such a stupid mother? Today I say, hallelujah, right? Thank God for somebody who actually had wisdom and foresight. So what we're getting to is that we're starting to harness the people who've always done this and in their heart of hearts know it's the right thing to do. And those, again, are people with passion and people with determination. And they're starting to realize, I'm not the only crazy one out there. There is a lot of people who actually practice what I do. And when these people come together and we're simply facilitators of gathering those people together, magic happens, because all of a sudden there is scientists who say, I can write a paper about this. There is university who say, we can help you with this. There is a bunch of people who say, we can start working on medical exam questions so we can start to have a certification exam for this. And again, a lot of it is done pro bono, simply because we're harnessing the power of the people who believe this and who know this to be true already. And then slowly but surely we start to infiltrate. So we're working with the American Board and College of Internal Medicine, because a lot of the younger physicians, a lot of the what I call the hipster generation, right? They don't want to practice medicine like the 65-year-old physician who just is being completely cynical. They are still, I guess, blue-eyed enough to think that they can actually restore people to health. And so it's the younger generation that really, really is starting to make inroads at universities, at medical schools, in hospitals, and say, hey, we need to change the way we're practicing medicine.
What is happening with doctors who have some sort of fear that having healthier patients will reduce their income?
Well, it's a great question, but what happened to all the farmers who were fearful when the US government withdrew subsidies on tobacco farming? What are we going to do now? Well, guess what? They all now grow corn, and we use all the high fructose corn syrup to put into our bread and milk and whatever else. They grow cattle, right? So what happens if we change the way we eat? They're all going to grow broccoli and beans and whatever else, right? Same with physicians. When you look at smoking rates, when 50% of the population used to smoke, now it's about 20% of the population. Everybody knows smoking kills you, but there is still 20% of older people who will smoke. Furthermore, it's only the communicable disease will continue to be there. Accidents will continue to happen. So all the acute care will continue to be there. And if you don't prescribe metformin 20 times a day, what if you could get paid as a physician for actually spending 45 minutes with your patient, listening to their concerns, get paid adequately for it because there is enough money in the kitty now that you can pay for proper consults rather than having to do this in 10-minute increments. So funny enough, things always adjust. And at least in the US, there is no way we can continue to spend 18% of GDP on a healthcare system that is only the 34th best in the world. So clearly things are desperately wrong.
Definitely. And how are, I assume that once a doctor changes his mindset and starts practicing more lifestyle related interventions, obviously their lives are changed and they never regret it.
It's amazing when you hear the stories. And that's one of the things why I like being in this industry. I kid you not, in the first cohort, we had physicians who were 70 years old. There is absolutely no commercial benefit for them to be lifestyle medicine certified. But they've been waiting for 40 years for somebody to recognize that eating well and sleeping well and moving properly is actually the best medicine. Hippocrates already said, let food be thy medicine, medicine be thy food, right? And so these people say, Stephan, this is the best thing I've ever done. I now treat patients and patients come back to me and say, doctor, I'm actually being healed. I start to enjoy medicine again because I'm making a difference in other people's lives. And moreover, I make a difference in my own life. My wife or my husband is starting to eat better. My children are starting to get onto the bandwagon. My church, my relatives, everybody's starting to say to me, what happened to you? You look so much more vibrant. You look so much more energetic. What's going on? And that is an incredibly powerful method of disseminating, because whatever you do, I don't know, this is a very old movie and I may be showing my age, but there used to be this movie When Harry Met Sally, right? And where she kind of has this restaurant scene where where he says, whatever she is having, I'll have me some of that too, right? That is basically what lifestyle medicine does. People say, hey, I wish I had half of your energy and your enthusiasm. Where does that come from? I said, well, just eat well and sleep well and not even exercise, just move naturally, move regularly, and all good things will come to you.
Sure. Tell us a little bit about the process of getting certified by the International Board and how do you prepare for that exam and how everything happens before and after the exam.
For starters, so we have basically 4 or actually 5 levels in the US, but maybe for Mexico, we'll start with 3 levels. We have certification for physicians, so you must be licensed to practice medicine in Mexico. The second thing you need is what we call the preparation for the exam. So it's 30 hours of what we call continued medical education equivalent, right, to learn what you will be tested on. And so there is 4 or 5 approved courses that we can use. One of them actually is in Spanish. So the Lifestyle Medicine Board Review course has been produced in Spanish so people can learn the science of lifestyle medicine in Spanish. Then we require 10 hours of what we call in-person continued medical education, which people get from an approved event like a lifestyle medicine conference or an event where people gather and talk about lifestyle medicine. This obviously for people to experience the energy and the motivation and the enthusiasm that exists when people come together who are like-minded so they can network, but they can also further learn. And then for physician, the third thing that they must have, or the fourth thing really after being certified as a physician, is that they fill out or provide a case study. It's a very simple, non-onerous thing that simply asks, tell us about a time where you made an intervention in either your own life or the life of one of your patients. What was the diagnosis? What was the intervention? What were the outcomes? Really, really simple, just so people can practice some of the stuff that they study. When people have that, they register for the exam. They sit for the exam. The exam is a 4-hour multiple choice, 4 answers, only 1 correct exam of obviously international medical exam standard. People have 4 hours to complete the exam. For non-physicians, it's a separate exam. It's 120 questions. The CME prerequisites are the same, but the case study falls away. And in terms of prerequisite, they must have a PhD, a master's, or a bachelor's in a health-related discipline. So you can't have a bachelor's in accounting. It better be a bachelor's in nursing or dietetics or whatever else, right? And so those are the 3 levels that we have. We have the physician level, the PhD master level, and the bachelor level, and they take their exam, and then they become certified lifestyle medicine physicians, professionals, or practitioners.
Once they are certified, how do you see them changing their practices and the way they talk and intervene with patients?
So the first thing that happens is most people actually start doing some of the stuff themselves. When you start to learn the science, you say, oh, I'm going to try this myself, right? The second thing then happens is they try it on their patients. They say, hey, I know the doctor told you to take the metformin, but did you know that diabetes 2 is actually reversible? Maybe read this book or go and watch this webinar or just listen in to this and this person, and you might want to hold off on the metformin until you've watched this webinar or clip or whatever else, right? That's at the nurse level. At the physician level, they obviously immediately start to say, rather than writing out a prescription for metformin, they say, hey, here is what I want you to do. I want you to fiber up your diet substantially. I want you to eat at least 30 grams of fiber every day, and fiber not from Metamucil, but from eat lentils, eat apples, eat this, that, and the other. Because then here is what happens. You start to have bowel movements every day. You start to have some of the bad stuff goes away. Your blood sugar levels are starting to come down because you put less fat in you, blah, 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 blah. They give them lifestyle medicine prescriptions. And the reason why we love diabetics is because the change is instant. After every meal, they can see whether or not their meal has done them damage or their meal has done them good. And diabetics are incredible in a way that they know instantly, hey, what I'm doing actually works. If you got atherosclerotic plaque, it obviously takes months for them to start to get pliable and then slowly dissolve, right? Or sometimes years. Blood pressure is also a good one because that starts to come down and get lowered very, very quickly on a good diet and regular movement. So yeah, people just get excited about it because that bloody thing works.
Are you seeing any specific kind of doctor or health professional that it's getting to you more, to lifestyle medicine? I mean, cardiologists.
Absolutely. So we have about 30% of our diplomates are from family medicine, or what you call in Mexico, general practitioners. People who do everything. The first kind of point of defense. About 30% come from internal medicine because obviously gastroenterology, endocrinology, cardiology, all of those things that are directly affected by the way we eat and move, particularly when you talk about rehab. So cardiovascular rehab is obviously huge. If you can teach people how to change the way they eat and move so that their stents won't clog up again, is obviously huge. And again, one of my favorite little clips, if you Google, President Bill Clinton, and you listen to what he has to say after he had stents put in, and he was one of the first converts at the government level to lifestyle medicine, who said, hey, I listened to Dean Ornish and Caldwell Esselstyn, and it completely changed my life. Because, if you look at Bill Clinton, irrespective whether you're a Democrat or you're a GOP aficionado, right? When you look at his health, he used to be always chubby and whatever, and he's been healthy and thin and vital for a very long time because he practices lifestyle medicine. So you see how these things are slowly coming in. And so again, internal medicine, preventive medicine is another one that obviously is fairly interesting. But the funny thing is, we have dentists who say this works for your oral health. It's incredible what it does to the way it affects you. We have dermatologists who say we have these kids, right, who've got rashes everywhere because the mother feeds them all the, low-fat dairy milk and whatever else. And the minute we put them onto something else, it just disappears, right? We have emergency medicine. What the heck has emergency medicine got to do with lifestyle medicine? But again, because it's meant to be the foundation of everything that we do. It truly is virtually every branch of medicine that starts to embrace this because people realize, hey, everything starts with a good, solid, plant-based whole foods diet or predominantly plant-based whole foods diet, minimally processed foods, regular exercise or regular movement, and good sleep. And again, the whole positive psychology bit, the whole idea of letting go of anger and all of those other things.
You said a very important word, reversible. Some diseases are reversible. How is the general perception on this word in the US? Because in Mexico, I think it's just a new word that we're going to introduce, and we want to legitimize that possibility.
Initially, people tried to sue us for it. And we said, please do, because there's nothing better than a public stoush in a public court at the high court level where somebody like a pharmaceutical company sues you for saying, hey, you can reverse chronic disease. And then you bring out all the evidence that shows diabetics time and time and time again. So, the reversal. So initially we talk about three things. prevention, arrest, and reversal. And let me just give you a couple of the challenges with this, right? Because when we talk about chronic disease reversal, or let me start with prevention. Prevention is basically lifestyle choices that don't allow chronic disease to develop. The challenge is we all know what to do, but we don't do what we know. And the other thing is that we don't change behavior based on the prevention of future disease. We only really change current behavior based on what's happening to me right now. Right now, I've got indigestion, so I'm going to need some, whatever acid reflux medication. Prevention has done a terrific job in the communicable disease arena. Mumps and measles and diphtheria and polio and leprosy, they're all basically disappeared with prevention. But we haven't prevented chronic disease at all. As a matter of fact, it's growing and growing and growing and growing. The next thing is the arrest. So lifestyle adjustments to stop disease progression. The challenge with this is that, like with most things, so you look at food addiction. Food addiction always gets the better of us because it's much easier to do nothing than do things in moderation. And one of our gurus of lifestyle medicine always says, well, this idea of everything in moderation is actually quite interesting because would you like some moderate gangrene on your feet? Would you like a moderate heart attack? Or how would you feel with a moderate stroke? People all say, you must be kidding, right? So moderation actually doesn't quite work. So you go to the reversal. The biggest thing of reversal is that there is a dose response to lifestyle medicine. So if let's say you do 7 days a week, 3 times a day, you do processed meats, processed foods, processed this, and you make Monday meat-free, yes, it's good. But if you're chronically diseased, it won't make much difference in your chronic disease. And so my question always is, if you were suffering from lead poisoning, how much lead should you eat every day to get rid of your lead poisoning? And everybody knows the answer is none. So if I were to suffer from cardiovascular disease, and we know that cardiovascular disease comes from cholesterol buildup in my arteries, and we know that cholesterol comes from saturated fats. Well, then how much saturated fat should I eat every day if I got heart disease? Well, the answer is none, please, if you want to reverse your disease. If you just want to arrest it, maybe once a week you're bacon and eggs, but maybe not more. Right. But the best is if you do it. We're not into don't eat. We're simply saying replace, and there are certain things you can eat 4, 5, 6, 10 times a day. There are certain things you shouldn't eat more than maybe once a week. And there's certain things you maybe shouldn't eat more than once a month. Still have it, enjoy it, but don't overdo it. And again, recognize what you're trying to do. Stay healthy or reverse chronic disease. And when it's chronic disease, the more lifestyle medicine interventions you make, the more your disease will be reversed. That is a direct dose response to it.
What advice would you give now Mexican doctors and health-related specialties to jumpstart and kickstart this lifestyle medicine movement? Other than getting certified, of course, but how do you see that?
There is strength in numbers. We've seen this in the US. When one person on his own, on her own, goes into their university and says, hey, did you see this research? They're going to be laughed out of the office, right? So what you're doing with your association, that's the first part, because you start to have each other's backs. You start to have a consistent message. I always refer to the hymn sheet. We all sing off the same hymn sheet, because imagine for a moment an environment where the president of the hospital practices lifestyle medicine, the head of cardiology practices lifestyle medicine, the cardiac nurses practice lifestyle medicine, the dietitians know about lifestyle medicine. So there's an integrated approach. So as a patient, I don't get mixed messages. I get the same message every time. That's the end goal. So how do we get there? You get organized. You start to recruit members. You start to work with the willing. Don't ever work with the reluctant. Don't waste your breath on trying to convince a smoker to stop smoking. They already know they should, right? Work with the person who says, hey, I want to stop smoking, please help me. That's the people you want, so work with the physicians who say, hey, I'm sick and tired of doing this diagnose the ill, prescribe the pill, send the bill model. How can you help me change this? We educate, we certify. Certification simply gives you credibility. Because today, like in the age of fake news, anything can be sold as fact. Did you know that, keto diet, you can lose weight? Of course, that's a fact in the first week or two. What it does to your cholesterol and what it does to everything else, nobody tells you. So again, you get educated, you get organized, you start to have conferences, you start to have webinars. As you do, it attracts people. Word of mouth spreads, right? And then all of a sudden you get to a critical mass where you can start to say, okay, now we have enough people of goodwill and influence at the university, and I make it up the University of Mexico City, because there is now enough critical mass there, and they start to include lifestyle medicine into their medical curriculum. And then a second university starts to say, hey, we want to do that too. And then a third one. And so not only do we then start to retrofit existing physicians, we also start to equip physicians who come out of the medical pipeline, so to speak, and dietitians and nurses and physician's assistants, and the whole medical fraternity, so to speak, starts to get educated. What happens next is then insurance companies start to say, oh, we can start to see that if we were to reverse, just take, again, diabetes. A person with a hemoglobin A1C of around 9 uses at least $1,500 of medication, at least. Plus then all the ancillary medication they need, because they usually have heart disease and they usually have blood pressure issues and they have all the related issues, that they probably easily cost you $10,000 to $12,000 a year just to take care of them. If you start to get them off lifestyle medicine and they make them healthy again, your costs per annum is a fraction. And so all of a sudden there's these big chunks of money that no longer are being used. Well, that's very interesting, particularly to vertically integrated companies who get a benefit if people don't use the money. And so it's funny, it's like an octopus's tentacle. It starts to just spread out and weave itself into every part of medicine. As I said, the best example I can give you is smoking. Medicine knows these days that smoking is not good for you.
Do you see at some point in the future, or probably even now in the US, you might see some cases where doctors choose not to pursue more studies in the traditional areas of medicine and just dedicate themselves to lifestyle medicine?
Yes, we obviously see the first. So we have a big organization here called Kaiser Permanente. They're one of those vertically integrated medical systems. So they're building now their own medical university. They run their own hospitals. They have their own health insurance. For them, this is the only way forward, because they are starting to see that applying lifestyle medicine to their daily practice reduces their healthcare costs, which means they can offer lower premiums. Their physicians are on salaries. They don't get incentivized by seeing people 100 times a day. They get incentivized by keeping people healthy. And so it just creates this completely new paradigm. And then you've heard of, in the US, we have these large organizations like Berkshire Hathaway, Chase, and Amazon, who kind of gathered together and say, we want to reinvent the healthcare system. At this stage, they're just reinventing in terms of buying bulk, so they buy metformin cheaper. We're working with them is to say, hey, you maybe don't need metformin at all. And I have nothing against metformin per se. In the right instance, it's the right prescription, right? But I'm just using it as an example, so don't sue me, right, for using them, right? But the point I'm trying to make is people start to realize you can make money. There is concierge practices around. There is many of the wealthier people. It's funny how we pursue wealth all of our lives, and then we lose our health pursuing wealth. And now that we're rich, we have lost our health, and now we have to spend all our money to regain the health that we lost pursuing wealth. So there is a lot of people who say, I'm tired of being treated by these people who don't know. So they happily pay $100, $150 a month to somebody to take care of them in a concierge type of an environment where they get all the medical insurance and the hospitals, whatever, from the establishment. But my day-to-day, my general practitioner is actually a lifestyle medicine physician, and I pay him personally. That's obviously only available in the upper echelons of, obviously, socioeconomic structure. But what happens is things are usually always a top-down thing. When the rich people do it, the not-so-rich people want to do it too, right? And it has that follow-on effect. And so, again, it just permeates across all levels. And so, yes, we absolutely see a proliferation of independents who open up their lifestyle medicine practices, their primary care offices. and entire organizations who say enough.
Thank you. Your approach to the government and how the government in the US has seen this and approached this in the last 5 years, let's say.
With difficulty. So we're not there yet. As I said, right now, the government is actually, and I don't mean the government, individual people, I mean the structures are actually one of the biggest enemies. Because I mentioned corn. Corn is subsidized in the US. Farmers produce corn like there is no tomorrow. There's only 2 uses of corn because nobody eats as much corn in the US as we maybe do making the Mexican style food, right? Most corn is used to make high fructose corn syrup, which then is put into absolutely everything. I mean, since when does bread have to have sugar added? The other thing they do is obviously they chop it up and feed it to the cows in the feedlots so we can have more burgers. And so the system is stacked against lifestyle medicine. The farming and dairy lobbies are incredibly strong in Washington. Broccoli and beans have no lobby at all. So at the moment, we're trying to slowly lobby the government. We hope that COVID will be one of those events that makes people realize a good immune system is absolutely crucial. And once the dust has settled and all the studies are starting to come out and they show that it's males over the age of 65 with 2 or 3 or 4 comorbidities who had 100 times greater death rate than a healthy, or 1,000 times greater death rate than a healthy 25-year-old. Once this data comes in, I think there is more of a willingness to listen to how can we increase immune system for people, because clearly social distancing is not what we can economically afford. We all need to go to work. We all need to go and pursue a living. So having healthy immune systems is actually the answer to COVID, not an isolation of the healthy people so they don't get contaminated. So we might have opportunity. Who knows?
Okay, so to begin concluding, what do you think, what would you like to be your legacy for the next years in terms of your position there at the International Board?
So my biggest, I guess, desire is that, and we're getting there, lifestyle medicine is the only medical discipline I know on the planet Earth that has consistency in the way it's taught and consistency the way it's certified. The same exam is taken in Mexico as it is taken in the UK, as it is taken in Australia or in Qatar or in Saudi Arabia, in the Philippines, in Korea, in Japan, everywhere on Earth. People learn of the same hymn sheet. They learn the same science out of the same books, right? So the Lifestyle Medicine Board Review course that I mentioned before that has been translated into Spanish. It's also been translated into Portuguese. It's the only thing that people in Brazil use. It's been translated into Korean. It's the only thing people in Korea use. It's been translated into both simplified and intricate Chinese. So again, we are getting to the point where if you get certified in lifestyle medicine in Mexico, you will be able to practice in the US or in Australia without any problem because the certification is the same. We're not quite there yet because being trained as a physician is obviously more important than being trained as a lifestyle medicine physician for the time being. But if you talk about future and legacy, I think we will realize that having consistency in the way we teach and we practice medicine is actually a good thing. Why should a Mexican physician have to jump through all these hoops to be licensed to practice in the US when they know at least as much, if not more, than the US counterpart? Just because somebody decided, oh, you have to go and jump through all our hoops, and then the Mexico obviously put all the hoops for the US physicians, and the same is all over the world. So I think if I had my way, in 10 years' time, we could say lifestyle medicine is actually practiced the same the world over because human physiology doesn't change, whether in Papua New Guinea or in Timbuktu. A human being is a human being, and fiber makes you go to the toilet anywhere you are, you are, right? And so we don't need, but Mexico is different. Oh, you don't understand. We're different in Patagonia or we're different in Switzerland. As human beings, we're all the same, right? And so we have opportunity.
Do you have any book, podcast, website, blog that you recommend to our listeners?
I always say, go to the lifestyle medicine societies. So the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, which is lifestylemedicine.org, is a terrific repository of information. I strongly recommend, obviously, books, anything on nutritionfacts.org, what Michael Greger does, right, is obviously, everything is for free. You can watch to a gazillion podcasts. You can Google, like I got Crohn's syndrome, and he gives it a lifestyle medicine prescription for it, right? It's brilliant. Obviously, the whole Dean Ornish thing, like Caldwell Esselstyn, all of those people, I think, are obviously good. I'm sure that the AMMF will have plenty of resources. The challenge at the moment is it's not that many resources yet in foreign languages, but we're desperate to obviously find grant money so we can translate more and more and more into obviously at least Spanish and maybe Chinese, which are obviously the most prolific languages around the world, right? So we'll see.
Perfect. Anything else you would like to add, to share?
No, I'm good. I think I've talked my heart out. So
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Stephan. This was really enlightening. You very easily could pass as a doctor.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing, both the important side of lifestyle medicine as a practice, but also how to think about this and how to build a movement for the future. So hopefully many people in Mexico will be knocking on your door and your institution and the board.
People will knock on your door, right?
We'll knock on everyone's door. We'll talk about this.
We're there to support and to build family, but hopefully many people will knock on your door. So there you go.
Thank you very much for this conversation, and all the best to you.